Michael Moss is a New York Times bestselling author, investigative journalist, and Pulitzer Prize winner. His book, Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us, takes readers inside the food industry to reveal how we become addicted to and affected by processed food. Michael Moss claims that food manufacturers are complicit in creating a catastrophic health crisis. How? Well, they spend billions to engineer the perfect balance of salt, sugar, and fat in every bite of our favorite foods, ensuring that we'll keep coming back for more and more and more. I recently sat down with Michael Moss in New York City to discuss his findings and get his thoughts about the future of food. Michael, let's start by just talking about the family jewels. How did you find the family jewels? Because the industry certainly knows about them. How did you get kind of onto this story? And then what did you find that surprised you the most?
Well, the whole book came about because I was lucky to come across a trove of documents that put me inside the largest food companies as they're formulating, marketing, selling their products. And it was in those documents that I came across this meeting, 1999, the heads of the largest food companies in North America getting together for a very rare and private meeting. Normally these guys are at each other's throats for space in the grocery store, but they get together to talk about none other than the emerging obesity problem in this country, the world. And they're brought together by none other than these cabals of insiders in these companies who are growing alarmed, concerned about their culpability in that emerging epidemic. And it's just a fascinating meeting because up before them stands not some white-coated researcher or public health advocate, but one of their own, a senior official at the largest company of all, Kraft, who stands up and he's armed with dozens of slides and he lays at their feet responsibility in large part, not just for obesity, not just for diabetes. He starts linking highly processed foods to several types of cancer, and he pleads with them to start turning the corner and make some attempts to make their products healthier. He sits down and up stands one of the most powerful people in the room. He was the head of General Mills at the time. And he makes a couple of points. He says, look, we are already working to make our products healthier. We're adding grains. We have versions that are low fat, low sugar. If people want those, they are in the store. We're offering choice. But we are also, you have to remember, beholden to our shareholders. And there is no way we're going to put products out there unless they are designed to be sold and purchased and loved. And he referred to, according to the people in the room, sort of, there's no way we're going to mess around with the company jewels, referring to that unholy trinity of salt, sugar, fat, on which the processed food industry relies so much to make their products powerfully attractive.
As you were working on this, how did it change your diet, and how did it change you as a shopper going to the store?
You know, I actually, believe it or not, felt empowered by what I was learning from the food engineers, just kind of listening to them describe their efforts to maximize, using salt and talking about the flavor burst of salt, and fat they described as the mouthfeel, which it's not even a taste, it's a sensation you get when you bite into like a warm, toasted, melted cheese sandwich. You can tell I'm kind of a salt and fat guy because the pleasure center of my brain is lighting up just thinking about that. Or sugar, of course. Just listening to them talk about their efforts, I felt was empowering because I can now walk into the grocery store and it's not this la-la land of soft music or bright neon colors. I see battles going on in every one of these products on the shelf, how they're perfectly designed and shaped and built to get us to buy them and put them in the cart. And hey, if we can't resist overeating, so be it. So for me, the book, and I hope it is for readers, is empowering in that sense. Because ultimately, we're the ones making the decision about what to buy, how much to eat. And that's a position of power that I hope we can we can use more of.
Well, you mentioned perfectly designed. I mean, it's engineered in such a scientific degree. I mean, you were talking about sugar. Too much sugar, ugh.
Yeah,
but they hit the right note every time, don't they?
One of my favorite characters in the book is Howard Moskowitz, a legend in the industry, trained in experimental psychology at Harvard, invented many of the biggest icons in the grocery store. He walked me through his recent creation of a new soda flavor for Dr. Pepper. And Howard was the person who coined the term the Bliss Point for the perfect amount of sweetness in the product that would send us over the moon. Not too little, not too much. He started out with some 52 different versions of sweetness of the flavor, subjected those to his 3,000 consumer taste tests, took the data, threw it in his computer, did his high math regression analysis thing, and out comes these bell-shaped curves, where at the top of the curve is the optimum amount of sweetness. Again, not too little, not too much. And the Bliss Point is just such a perfect encapsulation of that feeling you get when you eat these products.
Addiction, what does it do to our brain? How would you compare it to cocaine?
You know, there is no word that the food industry hates more than the A word. I mean, they will argue left and right and up and down that you can't compare even the junkiest food to cocaine or heroin. And in some ways, you don't have to use the A word, because, you know, when they talk about maximizing the allure of their products, they use this great lingo like craveability, snackability. One of my favorite words is more-ishness, as in building in more-ishness. But I was able to spend time with experts on addiction who've studied both drugs and food. And they're convinced that for many of us, the sweetest, fattest, most palatable foods will cause what they call patterns of overconsumption, indulgence. The food, especially the salt, sugar, fat, it interacts with your saliva. It sends a electrical signal to the reward center of your brain, which sends back this feeling of pleasure, which is basically saying, Michael, I love that, eat more, go for it. And when you think about it, there's nothing nefarious about that, because we need pleasure from food in order to eat. Otherwise, we wouldn't eat, we'd get bored, and that would be the end of us, right? So, but it's their ability to sort of max out that reward system for their products that makes them so powerful, or if you're trying to lose weight or maintain weight, so potentially treacherous.
Transparency labels. What needs to be in the labels now that's missing, and how would that change the landscape, do you think?
I mean, I feel that consumers should know what's in the product, starting with the amounts of the biggest things, salt, sugar, fat, the good stuff as well, but even sort of some of these lesser ingredients that people don't know about. And, you know, it boggles me that the industry would be scared of putting some of their things on the label. If they're proud of their work, put it on the label and let people choose.
A couple quick final questions. The exporting of the Western diet. I mean, we know about all the issues in this country, you know, with diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. But we're seeing, if anything, we're seeing it spread elsewhere, and perhaps in cultures where people ate pretty healthy. They ate a lot of vegetables and that sort of thing. Is that another thing that we can look at and say, geez, this is and a continuation of pushing that envelope, trying to gain market share, get more money?
You know, ironically, as Americans have become more concerned about their diet and have been looking at processed foods and trying to find ways to sort of control them in their own lives, these companies have moved overseas, sending American-style processed foods into developing countries like Brazil, where there's emerging middle class, into the heart of Europe. I gave a talk recently in Vienna to the health ministers of a few dozen countries, and they're all sitting there with grim faces, because not only do they now have lots of American-style processed foods, they have huge amounts of obesity and diabetes that are just killing the finances of their healthcare budgets. So it's becoming not just a health issue, but a financial problem for other countries. Not to mention the loss of the culture of their own sort of native foods, and that's the real tragedy there.
Michael Moss, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much. This has been great fun.
Likewise for me. Thank you.